Okay. Hey, everyone. Welcome to The Field Between. My name is Ahmed.
And I'm Yasmine.
What do we got this time?
What do we got? Let's just start with a general update. How are you, Ahmed?
I'm okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Break it down for us.
Let's see. We've really no change. Continued doing the events. We're at like 2 things a week now, kind of, between the cafe and then just supporting like another event. Continuing job applications. That's fun.
But I'm proud of you. You've started like segmenting up your days a little bit more so that you're also like taking advantage of this time to work on other projects.
There is that.
So you've been working on your screenplay, which is awesome. You've written a lot, actually.
Been working on the screenplay. That's true. I finally cut myself off from going down a rabbit hole where I was like just reading a lot of stuff because I felt like I needed to get a lot of nuance and detail for the world and whatever, which is important, but I think at some point it becomes an excuse for not really developing the characters.
I totally get that.
And so I'm sure I'll still have to look things up here and there, but I think it's probably best to just go ahead and start. And the deal that I made with myself is that I want to finish this by the end of Ramadan. And if it's not finished by the end of Ramadan, then I'm not allowed to talk about it anymore.
I think that's harsh. No, I totally get that, though. Even though I don't do that kind of writing, even when you're doing like academic writing, you do have to research a lot, obviously, before you start. But it gets to a certain point where it's like you're never going to actually research everything. Like it's indefinite. And you have to just kind of like start producing and then research as you go. And it's hard to make that switch because it's hard to know like when that time is, when do you know enough?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad that it felt very rich in detail. So it seems like you did quite a bit of reading.
Did it?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah,
I'm eating this cookie. People have been bringing us a lot of food lately.
Which is not necessary, by the way, but very sweet.
Actually, it is kind of nice sometimes. These cookies are great.
They're excellent. And a friend bought, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, postela. It's like a Caribbean dish that I was telling him I had in Puerto Rico, where it's basically like lasagna, but with, what's it called?
Plantains?
Yeah, with plantains. I was going to say bananas with plantains. Mm-hmm. And I really, really liked it. So that was sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just finished the last cookie.
I'm glad they were good.
That's it. Other than that, I've kind of been doing pretty good at going to the gym. Well, going to the gym and stuff, but I've been waking up and in the mornings, for whatever reason, for the first like 2 or 3 hours of the day, I just can't move around.
You've been in a lot of pain. You also have not been sleeping well because you've been in pain, which must be really frustrating.
Yeah.
Like there was one night that you were like, I slept. I haven't slept for like a month.
But now I'm okay. Like
at
right
the end
now,
of your day.
at the end of the day, I feel like I can move around and stuff. It's still like somewhat limited, but just in the beginning of the day, I'm not even really sure. Like I can't do anything. It hurts to like even just stand up.
I was going to say, do you feel like you should start your day with stretching and movement, or are you in so much pain that you have to just kind of take it slow?
I just need to get my coffee and then sit in that orange chair for a bit.
Yeah.
And then start moving around.
Yeah. I'd like you to go back to the doctor. I feel like something's getting worse, but...
Well, I have doctor's appointments.
Yeah. But not till March, right? I guess at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. That's really frustrating.
How's it going for you?
Okay. I don't know. I feel like I'm just like very much like in a to-do list phase of life. And it's kind of hard to turn that off then. And it's like a little annoying. It's just like constantly thinking about what you have to get done to get through the day.
Yeah.
I really miss having like hobbies I'm excited about, which there's so much happening in the world. This is like not that deep or important, but still, or like side projects. But yeah, I'm trucking along. I'm still really enjoying.
This is a side project.
Alhamdulillah. This is a side project I actually genuinely really look forward to. That's true.
Does it not feel like a side
it does.
hobby thing anymore?
No, it's lovely. No, I genuinely mean that.
Oh.
But I feel like you put most of the...
Want?
What'd you say?
I said, what more do you want?
I don't know. I'm a little jealous also because you just have more time now. Like you're working on your screenplay, the cafe, and I'm really proud of you. But like I'm not doing my poetry stuff or,
Yeah.
I even have to like work really hard to make sure I still get to see friends. And it's usually like paired with like also doing a little bit of work in the background. And then you're like not really seeing friends or really working the way you should be.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I mean, things are largely good. I'm not complaining, but I am excited for like some disruption in routine. We have some cute little Valentine's Day plans, and I wish you were coming. I'm gonna miss you, but I'm gonna go home to New York for my sister's birthday. I'm looking forward to that. So some things to like mix it up a little bit will feel nice because it does feel a little bit like a grind right now. Mm-hmm. And then like I annoy myself. Like I don't know. I feel like I don't think you have this, which is good, but like I feel like if I'm a little bit like hyper in a state of like trying to get stuff done, then like it's a little hard to turn that off. If that makes sense. Like even like at the home, I'm like things have to be clean. It's like I could just let it go, but I'm like in a little bit of like a overactive mindset.
Yeah, you don't let things go.
Yeah, I mean that's generally true for me. But
yeah.
One thing I've been happy about. Well, several things. One, you've been so supportive and lovely, which I really appreciate, and like even just thinking out of the box for ways for me to like get stuff done, which is sweet. And we went to like a bakery the other day and like worked really late, and that was nice. Just like even mixing up location is nice.
Yeah, no one's ever thought of that before.
But whatever, I still appreciated it. It feels nice to be like working with someone out.
First guy to do it.
Yeah,
I was the first one to do it.
Having cupcakes and making lots of good foods for me.
Yep.
What was I trying to say? Oh, I feel like one thing I've been happy about is that I'm kind of treading water with exercise, which is better than I was doing last semester. At least I'm being consistent, even though it's not like amazing. I'm going at least twice a week, you know?
Okay.
And I've been reading more, which I'm really enjoying.
That's good.
And that was like a big New Year's goal for me because I only read 23 books last year. I've always tracked my reading on Goodreads.
Uh-huh. That's a lot of books.
Yeah, but like in 2019, I read 50 books. So I've like really fallen off.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, it sounds silly and not everyone has to track, but for me, it's a way to like be accountable and I enjoy it. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to read 36 books this year. So it's like 3 books a month. So I've been like keeping up with that.
You got to read zines, just short things.
Yeah, sometimes I do. I just read a really good book actually called Dearborn, which reminded me that I really want to go to Dearborn with you this summer. And neither of us have ever been to Michigan.
Yeah.
But they were fun. I would recommend it if you're looking for some short stories. I think if you're getting back into reading, at least for me, like poetry and short stories are kind of accessible ways to do that.
Yeah.
Because you can like read a few and take a break, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the attention spans are, at least mine, is you got to rebuild it like consciously. It's not immediate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much where I'm at.
We just booked a little writing retreat for you.
Which is honestly
sending you off to middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania.
Which is the sweetest thing ever. It's like so indulgent. It was so sweet of you to encourage me to do because I could just stay here. Like I should do that. It's kind of silly. But I have found that really helpful in the past just to go somewhere else for a few days. Like for my dissertation, I got a ton of writing done when I did that one time. Mm-hmm. I think I've only done it that one time, right?
Actually, you know what our other option could have been?
What?
Is I just go to New York.
And then
and then you stay here.
Actually, genuinely, if you want to mix it up because you haven't had a chance to do that, we can do that. This is cancelable. Consider it. Basically, I have to be sad and lonely, so we can't be together.
Yeah.
And I don't want to like feel like we have a lot of events happening because I will say it's a little tricky to balance. Like I'm so proud of the cafe, but it means a lot of maintenance for the house. So that is one thing that we're still figuring out a little bit. We're not even figuring it out, but it's like more wear and tear. But yeah, if you wanted to go to New York for like 5 days and hang out, you're welcome to.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Just stay with my parents.
Yeah.
Could be cute.
Yeah, it could be cute.
Yeah.
Let's think about that before. How long do you have to cancel?
I think it's set up to 48 hours ahead of time. So
nice.
If you want to think on it for like a week maybe and let me know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were just so focused on you going away.
Yeah.
I never thought about me going away.
Well, I guess like it feels like I'm the one who has to like get this thing done.
Yeah.
But you leaving would achieve that like it'd only be my mess in the house.
And I have to drive you anyway.
Right.
So I'm going to be driving a lot anyway.
I mean, 2 hours versus like 10 is like considerably different, but yeah.
7.
Is it ever 7 though? It's always like at least 8 or 9 to New York.
7. It's 7.
And I would say you could just fly, but I know you already don't love flying, and lately the news has been rough for flying.
Yeah, I don't want to fly.
I know.
I think it's time to build Snowpiercer.
Yeah.
I think it's actually time. We need to start investing in Snowpiercer.
It is time for some kind of apocalyptic plan.
Yeah. It's Super Bowl Sunday.
Oh, yeah, which neither of us...
Game's happening right now. The score is...
I have no idea. I don't even know who the Eagles are playing.
72 to 83.
And with who? Who's up?
Who's playing? You tell me.
I know the Eagles are playing because I've been learning crazy stuff about Philly fans.
Yeah.
I don't know who they're playing.
Guess any football team.
I'm trying to think of the names of football teams.
Yeah.
I genuinely can't think of any.
Nice. Okay.
The Packers are not there, and I would know that.
Yeah.
The Steelers are not there. I only know places I've lived. The Giants are not there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you remember the North Carolina team?
We had a football team?
Yeah.
I only thought about North Carolina for college basketball.
Yeah.
Who's our football team?
The Panthers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They're not in the Super Bowl, though, are they?
No, they're not.
Oh, who is?
Kansas City Chiefs.
Is that where Travis Kelce plays?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's the only reason I've heard of them.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Travis? Good?
I don't have any. He seems nice. I'm not like a Taylor Swift person, but I also don't dislike her.
Yeah.
I just kind of ambiently see information about her on the internet.
Yeah. Okay.
So wait, who's winning? The Kansas City people?
I don't know.
But you said a score.
Yeah, it's not. That's not the score.
Oh, you just made it up. Okay. Who would you be rooting for? I feel like we should root for Philly because we want to move there.
It's tough. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we do, Pennsylvania solidarity. But they are our in-state rival.
They're not. I think that's so silly.
Sure they are.
Pittsburgh is such a cute little city. It doesn't hold. It's like nothing. It's not on the same level as Philly in that way.
I'm talking about the football teams. The football teams are comparable.
All right.
Actually, I guess the Eagles were like a much better team this year, but the Steelers were pretty formidable.
Okay.
And Kansas City's like another Midwest rival. I don't know. It's tough. I don't really have any allegiance to Kansas City, so I guess by default I have to go Philly, but
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really care.
Yeah, no, we're not. I think I've seen the Super Bowl maybe twice. Sometimes I'll like watch the like musical acts later if people say they were good. Is Beyonce performing this year?
Kendrick Lamar.
Oh, that's cool actually. I would watch that.
Yeah.
I like Kendrick Lamar.
A lot of people do.
Yeah.
That's why he's performing the Super Bowl halftime show.
That's true.
Okay, what are we going to talk about?
Yeah. So there's been a lot of crappy stuff happening here in the US with news.
Like what?
Like Elon Musk, who no one elected, who's the world's richest man, has somehow... Yeah.
Wow. Congrats, Elon.
I know, he's really, really creepy. Has just been on a rampage, like slashing whole government agencies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really weird to watch. It's happening like very quickly. It kind of makes you realize, oh, there were never that many safeguards in place.
Yeah, much of the way things work are just kind of like, I guess, a gentleman's handshake agreement sort of situation.
Until they're not. Yeah. So there's one I want to talk about more, but I'll first start with a different one, which is USAID. I think USAID's an interesting one because there are a lot of critiques of the way that like American aid works, rightfully so. Historically under some administrations like the Bush administration, George Bush, it's been tied to like weird US policies that were like, like anti-abortion, for example. I mean, thankfully that was overturned a long time ago, but like it's not neutral, It
always accompanies regime change.
Not exclusively, but yes.
Yeah. Yeah, not exclusively.
At the same time,
often.
Like there is just the like heartbreaking fact that like so many NGOs globally were dependent on this aid, and that like so many people have been cut off from like food and medicine just instantaneously. It's kind of hard to like wrap your head around.
Yeah.
And that's the greater loss. But also I still do feel for like the government workers that had their whole ass lives and their kids and their families like in countries abroad who now just like are stranded in the middle of a school year without money or a plan. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people who I have to guess were like really dedicated to their work and like cared about the kinds of work that they did. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of breathtaking how quickly that was executed. So there's that. But I wanted to mostly focus today on the National Institute of Health, or the NIH. So NIH is like a thing that I've heard bandied around, but it just because it just like operated, and because I'm not particularly, I'm not in any way in like STEM or like health and science, it doesn't really like affect me. But it affects a lot of things. It's a government agency responsible for public health and research, and I kind of wanted to focus on how it's going to affect the universities.
Mm-hmm.
So the NIH cuts were announced this past Friday. They will go into effect when this podcast comes out Monday, which is tomorrow.
Oh.
Yeah, really,
timing.
really quick. Democrats have already announced that they will challenge us in court, which is good. So I hope that happens. My mom actually posted this New York Times article that I found helpful. You know, we have complicated feelings about the Times here, but I think this is informative, so I'm going to read a little bit of it. The nation's universities and academic medical centers were reeling on Saturday from a directive by the Trump administration to slash funding for medical research, a decision that doctors and scientists said would have a devastating effect on studies aimed at finding treatments for diseases such as cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. This change is aimed at reducing the amount of tax dollars that universities spend on overhead costs. The NIH, which announced the move Friday morning, said $9 billion of $35 billion, or about 26% of grant dollars distributed last year, had gone to overhead. So the policy, which takes effect on Monday, will cap indirect funds for costs like buildings, utilities, and support staff at 15% and is aimed at saving $4 billion. So there's two consequences for this, I think, that you can think of this in like two buckets. The first one is that we won't have the same resources to put towards finding cures for diseases like cancer and diabetes. The article mentions specifically cystic fibrosis and the fact that advancements were made directly through NIH grant funding, which is something that's really important to my family. My sister has cystic fibrosis. When she was first born, I don't think she would mind me sharing this. She's pretty open about it. The life expectancy was like 12 years old. And then throughout her life, it's been growing as she's gotten older. But there was this pill, trifecta, that was invented through NIH funding that has just completely changed her life. Like, I can't begin to explain what it's been like.
I feel like most medicines are developed with some sort of NIH funding.
Yeah.
And then they just somehow end up going on the private market.
Right. But I mean, literally, this has meant that like her life expectancy has become, as far as we know, inshallah, a normal person's life expectancy. Whereas like previously, the oldest person with cystic fibrosis was like in their 60s. It's meant that she doesn't have to constantly use she had to do like this like medical therapy that would like beat her chest like twice a day. Like her life is literally, she constantly coughed. It was like something that was just part of the background that we didn't know. Like it's just like her life is completely changed. And it's just crazy to think like those kinds of advancements won't be able to happen in this way anymore. Like that's 100%. It's not like an indirect thing that completely just led to that consequence. So there's that, which is heartbreaking enough. But then the second consequence is jobs. Like, it's insane. I didn't even know this until I was reading more about it, but it makes sense. Like, in a lot of places in this country, research universities are the largest employer, not just in the city, but in the state.
Yeah.
Like, there are plenty of states where that is the case. I think about people I know at Pitt, and I think about other faculty members, but what I forget is a lot of the people that we know here are also employed at Pitt through labs and through, other forms, mostly at Pitt especially, which has a really strong medical school of like lab funding. So yeah, I mean, there are entire PhD cohorts that are funded by NIH funding. Mm-hmm. And like, will those people just lose their funding? Will they be able to continue researching? And it's just, I mean, this is a little selfish, obviously, because it affects me and like so much is happening, but our universities are going to just immediately have such a drop in their competitiveness. If you were an international student, why would you go to a place that doesn't have funding? There's that aspect. And then there's also just thinking about like all the xenophobia that is completely unmasked now, that is completely unchecked. So we've already heard actually reports of like researchers who had signed contracts who were international, who are now like desperately trying to get out of them. And I think we'll see reversal. I think we'll see like a US brain drain. Like if I had a really bright kid, I would say apply to universities abroad potentially. I mean, not to give up on our universities so quickly, but it is really devastating.
Yeah.
Even if you're not in the sciences, we're going to feel it across the university. Mm-hmm. And if they're coming from this first, I mean, I'm sure they'll be coming for like different humanities sources of funding next.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Of course, like the one fucking thing that's not getting audited yet is like the military or the Pentagon. Like, it's just like, it's like sources of funding that like help us that they're slashing.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what, we're going to pay our taxes and like they won't pave our roads or go towards cancer research. They'll just be paying for like bombs. Like we were already at this crazy thing where like so much of our money was going to like devastation abroad and not to us. But now it'll be like purely that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But sorry if that was a little bit of a rant, but I'm feeling kind of sad about, it's also kind of like, I don't know how you feel, but like it is panic inducing, but not in a way that feels jarring. I feel like it's just like you're going through your to-do list, and then there's just kind of like dull, numbing sense of like, oh, things are kind of falling apart while I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I feel like I've had that feeling before, like the first Trump presidency and COVID and, just feeling so helpless watching the genocide unfold in Palestine. So it's not like this is the first time this has ever happened, but I guess it is like very close to home, and that it's like affecting potentially my employer and affecting like my students and like all my students who are pre-med and their prospects and like the kind of change they want to make in the world. Yeah.
I think it is certainly making some things feel a little bit more precarious, but I don't know. I do think that for a lot of people, it's been bad for a long time, and
for sure, but it's getting worse.
Yeah.
I think both things can be true.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, like, right, we already don't have great social safety nets, but now like that many people will be pushed into the edge. You know what I mean?
I'm watching this and I'm like, what are the Democrats really doing? Like, I know maybe some things are going to go to court, and
they've said they'll bring the NIH thing, for example, to court, which is something.
But like, did you see the video of them getting locked out of, what was it? It was it wasn't the NIH building. It was,
oh yeah,
was it the Department of Education building?
Yeah, because they said they're going to go for the DOE next, which also will really fuck up my job.
But they like literally just locked the doors, and they had some guy there, and it was just like a bunch of people trying to get into the building, and I'm like, just go in the building. Like, if you want to make a statement,
honest, I thought that was actually a good start. They haven't even done stuff like that yet. I thought that was something. At least they were physically making a stand, drawing attention. Because this is the other thing I'm worried about is like, I don't even know like if the general American public is being well like educated on what's happening. So I think it is important to do stuff like that, like show up physically at the places that are at risk of being cut, that are being cut.
But you're being shown being locked out. I'm like, if you like. Right now, I think what people need to see, if they're going to have any faith in the Democratic Party, is like, you need to see them actually fighting. And it's too much of a fucking gerontocracy. Like, all these people are like way too old and like cannot actually even push past a guy to go into a building that they've been, disallowed from entering. And I'm just like, I kind of, the party, it's not a good look for the party. I'm not saying like this is the thing that they could have done to.
Yeah.
But what I am saying is that visually, it is a representation of just, I think, how the party functions and has functioned in the last several years, which is like what people's main complaint about it is that all these people are way too fucking old. They're not going to be around to really deal with the consequences. They're of a class that really is just shielded from the consequences. And you don't really hear them fighting or what a plan is all that much. The talk is still about like, oh, what if we run, John Fetterman and whatever, or well, we should run Kamala Harris again, or like, there's just nothing that says like, oh no, these are the policies, right? Like, they're still kind of dissecting the election and what has led us to this moment, and they're saying, like, do we need to get like another Joe Rogan of the left, or do we need to blah, 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 instead of what are the policies that we can put in place that actually protect people from the shit that's going on right now? I just haven't heard that, but maybe I haven't been listening to the right things.
What do you mean you haven't heard critique of the Democrats?
No, I haven't heard those things proposed from the Democratic Party.
No, I agree with you. They have done very little.
And the fact that Trump is able to go into office and like immediately throw stuff into this much chaos, 100%. I just like want to double down on like, obviously we all know Joe Biden could have like single-handedly ended any aid to Israel, point blank period, right? Like, But also for the student loan thing where they made it seem like it was really complicated, or the $15 minimum wage thing, which was part of the platform that they made seem like, oh, this is too complicated or whatever. Like, if the Democrats wanted, they could have immediately gone into office and through executive order or whatever, like they could have just like rammed some stuff through, or the student loan forgiveness or whatever.
Yeah, there definitely feels like an arbitrariness. It's like, why is it possible to undo so much of the functioning of our government so quickly, but it wasn't possible to like pass universal health care, or to, I mean, and if there's not a Department of Education, because look, I feel like we spend a lot of time criticizing the Democrats, and I think that's warranted, but I don't want to like lose tracking what is like unfolding in real time under Republican control either, you know, like, but if the DOE crumbles, we might still have student loans, but we won't have any FAFSA or aid for students to go to school. It will entirely become a class-based system where only the rich can go to college, even public universities. Yeah. Like, that's insane.
So this is what I want to hear from the Democratic Party is like, okay, like it's not just that people will have student loans if we are actively whatever. Like, what are you doing about that? And also, you should be using your platform to instruct people, be like, do not pay your student loans. And like, how do we protect people from consequences of not paying their student loans? Because clearly they've been dealt a shorthand.
Do you think there might be a tax strike?
There should be.
I saw some conversation about that online, but I couldn't tell how serious it was.
I doubt one will happen this year because there's just like not enough time to coordinate such a mass action. But
truly though, what are we paying for?
I mean, there should have been one last year.
There should have been, obviously, with the genocide, but like, we're not even getting services now in return. Everything is becoming privatized.
I think a tax, again, it requires a national party with a base to be able to coordinate that sort of stuff. Democrats aren't doing anything. They're not doing anything through legislation, and they're not doing anything through the platform that they have to be able to like influence action.
Some more leftist Democrats are like Bernie, and like Ilhan Omar just proposed a Ministry of Peace as like a kind of like project to counter like the Department of Defense.
But are these things being just put forward by Bernie and Ilhan, or are they being taken up by the Democratic Party?
They're only the far left of the party, which is very small. Yeah.
Which the Democratic Party has actively worked to undermine over the last several years. Like, that's
sure.
Just, I know you know this, but it's just like, it is so frustrating to just see them kind of sit back and not really do much of anything.
But they also, I mean, look, I'm not one to like cap for the Democrats, but like, they don't have much control now. That's the problem. Like, there genuinely is, yes, they could be doing more. They are doing the least. They continue to disappoint. But like, there are no real checks and balances left besides the court. They have like no numerical sway.
They need to start by cleaning house within their own party.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like, there was a period of time when the Republicans didn't have much power.
But they got more done than this, for sure.
They disciplined the fuck out of their party.
You're right, yeah.
And even just a few minority Republicans who started off as the Tea Party. Like, do you remember back in like...
Yeah.
Like with what the fuck is
When did the Tea Party start?
With,
God
damn, what's her name?
2006-ish, maybe?
Like with Sarah Palin and all that shit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I saw like 2008, 2009. It was like 8 representatives who were able to just like take control of the party. And right now we have a situation where essentially people who are Republican are running and have seats in the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party, if it takes any action against its own members, it's been against Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and like AOC or whatever, and they censor them. They don't do shit about Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, like the people who are effectively Republicans, or about John Fetterman. Like, they just let these people run wild and say the most insane shit and hold up any sort of progressive like legislation, and they get no repercussions. In fact, everyone just kind of like kowtows to whatever they want.
Yeah, completely.
And so like, if the Democratic Party cannot actually push through anything and whatever, one, I would still argue that they should be doing it like fervently just to create an argument about it, like even if they're going to lose. 2, they need to start like disciplining everyone and like really cleaning house from
there's no desire though to have any of those progressives in power. That's the problem. Like, you're right, there's no desire for like the majority of the Democratic base to allow for like new leadership, to allow for like,
I mean, they did just elect a new DNC chair,
but isn't he like fairly dyed in the wool? Like, he's not really a radical candidate.
No, he's not a radical candidate.
Yeah.
But I mean, who knows? It's a little too early to say. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
But it's not like they gave it to someone who was known for like having more progressive platform and for kind of pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I feel, and I don't mean this to you directly, just kind of like discourse I've seen floating around. I do feel a little frustrated by some people who are like, it's always been this bad. Like, yes, that's true. We've been like sliding towards this for a long time, but I think it's okay to take stock and be like, this is accelerating.
This is
at an exponential case.
I think that's fair.
And like, if there's no DOE, and again, I'm just thinking about like, I think it feels more real if I think about what is immediately affecting me.
Yeah.
Right. And that's education. If there's no DOE, if there's no NIH, like, I don't even know if I have a job, or if I do, I don't know if it's a job that's fucking worth having. Like, if I'm only teaching like kids who can afford to go to school without Pell Grants, I don't really want to be an educator. Like, fuck that.
Yeah.
That's like being like a nanny for like, I mean, I love kids, all my kids of all their class backgrounds. I didn't have Pell Grants, but like, that does not sound rewarding to me or interesting. For all of the problems that higher education has, like, it is an incredible vehicle, I believe. And that would just render it like completely useless and meaningless. Like, I would almost rather than like, I don't know, find some other way to be in community with college age students that is not the university, but still get a paycheck. Like, I mean, and this hasn't happened yet, so I'm not trying to catastrophize, but it is a catastrophe. Like, things are unraveling at a pace that I think.
No, I mean, I feel you. I think I don't mean to suggest that it's like, oh, it's always been this bad and like now people are just seeing it and finally like I do think things are getting worse. However, I don't see it as a deviation from where we were going.
No, I agree.
I think it is a logical
I think
extension
we were like
of
on
everything
a trajectory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even like everything that Democratic Party led up to this, because they refused to actually do anything. Like, sorry to go back to it, but it's just like the other thing that they
really
could have done.
focus on the Democratic Party.
Well, yes, because people need to realize just like if we're gonna have an actual opposition party here, like be an opposition party.
I think that's well put. Like, it doesn't feel like an opposition party. It feels like, I mean, this is cliche, but it's true. It feels like two slightly different sides of the same coin. Like, it feels like, too much of the same.
Like, now, I wouldn't be surprised if Trump like suddenly was just like, executive order, we're gonna expand the Supreme Court and I'm gonna pack it with some conservative, which is something that Biden had that fucking commission to study and then like did nothing with it. They were like, nah, we're not going to do it. But during the campaign, he just like gestured to it and he was like, yes, we got to reform the Supreme Court and do all blah, blah, blah. And like they run adjacent to the right message, but then they like absolutely refuse to do anything. Even someone as like inconsequential and unimportant as the fucking Senate parliamentarian, they're just like, oh no, this person told us we can't do the thing that we want to do with the student loan forgiveness, so I guess we won't do it. If that was Trump, he would have fired the parliamentarian and been like, all right, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want.
Completely. Yeah, no, you're right. I think Republicans are good at strategy and they're good at using any tool at their disposal to kind of like throw a wrench in the gears, and the Democrats could really learn from that. Especially, I mean, I feel like the Democrats like get it together when it's for like shitty causes, but for when it's like preserving the most basic infrastructure of democracy, they're not pulling it together. The universities have been so draconian and so like happy to kind of essentially embrace it feels awkward to say, but it's true, like fairly fascist ideas about like who has a right to speech.
Yeah.
And now that their funding is being cut, I'm getting an email saying like, which I mean is fair enough, like it's going to really affect the entire university, but like, do you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like they kind of, not like they directly enabled this, but they kind of did. Like, they created an atmosphere that normalized suppression, that kind of prevented like academic freedom. Mm-hmm. And now things are really falling apart. They're talking out of two sides of
their mouth. They're like, oh, academic freedom and integrity is at risk.
Yeah.
But also when people express, I guess, thoughts that are not compliant with like where their funding is coming from, they're just like, we need to crack down on this.
I guess like it's tricky because it's not directly related. Like, the NIH is not like a free speech issue, obviously. It's like a research support issue, but I think it's related in the sense that I almost feel a little bit like the university systems were kind of kowtowing to like a pervasive source that was happening, or like a kind of shift that was happening nationwide and really globally in rhetoric. And like now it's coming down full force. You know what I mean?
Well, no, I actually do think it is like almost like a free speech issue because, like you said, a lot of these universities were kind of reading the writing on the wall, and you can see that in the, they've cut like suddenly like their DEI initiatives. And I think these actions are meant to ingratiate the universities to the Republican legislatures of their state, but also the Trump administration, to be like, oh, hey, look at us. We're not a woke university, and we don't tolerate woke on our campus. So maybe don't cut our funding, but
exactly.
But all these other universities that, HBCUs and like the universities with woke on the campus.
Right. No, I think that's well put. Exactly. I feel like that's the connection. And I do think that this directive is meant to hurt universities. I think it's intentional. Like, I think that they're like, we don't give a fuck about cancer patients, but like, at least this will hurt the bastions of wokeness or whatever they're thinking.
I think it's meant to discipline them and to create an environment that is more suitable for conservative thought.
It will. I'm actually already worried that there will be now more like nefarious private sources of funding. It's going to privatize the university further.
Well, that's the really concerning thing, is that a lot of these universities have, even before this, have been turning to private deals, and they're focusing a lot more on their like the big state schools that aren't like necessarily known for being super academically competitive. They've just been leaning a lot more into being in the athletics business, and they've been making deals with online gambling casinos and like all this shit that is just like, what is the point of a university anymore?
There is that, but I mean, a lot of state schools are very competitive. I know not all are, but many are. Ours is. I mean, and all the ones that I've gone to have been. But
I think over time, the more that happens, is the effect will be that the academic side is ignored, and just like it just becomes more of like okay, let's run this thing purely as a business, and let's just run a resort for children for 4 years.
I guess I don't know if it's gotten that far yet, but I think you're right.
I'm not saying it's gotten that far.
There's that one aspect of it, but I was thinking more privatizing in terms of like, I mean, this isn't private sector, but like aid from the military, like specifically getting funding from like weapons manufacturers, like not for maybe bio stuff, but certainly for tech stuff. I mean, I know that already is happening, but
probably. I think that'll happen a little bit more probably at the universities that are already getting that funding.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if we'll necessarily see more military funding going to more universities, but who knows?
I hope not. I guess not military specifically, but things like that I'm kind of worried about.
Mm-hmm. Maybe private prisons. Maybe we'll get a situation where like private prison companies start building the dorms for university students.
Oh dear. Yeah, it feels bleak, but I don't know. My students are incredible. I feel like we just have to like do our best to like, it feels stupid. I don't know, like just keep on going and resisting in whatever ways we can. Yeah.
I want to say one thing on the Trump Gaza thing.
I have one more thing to say before that too.
Okay.
This is a separate ban. Do you want to go first?
Separate ban.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
I was going to say one ban that I don't really care about and explain why.
Okay.
There's a ban on transgender people serving in the military. And I think it's creepy and obviously awful that like the far right has like demonized trans people who are like 1% of the population, like who just like it's bizarre that they have like made this such a focal issue and really targeted people and made them less safe. And I guess that this ban also adds to that, which is not cool. But also, like, who cares? It's the fucking military. Like, I think
that's the effect of it, though, is that it's probably, I think realistically going to target very few people, realistically. The same way that the trans ban in sports, like, we're talking about a ban that's going to target, like, 50 athletes.
Right.
Or 200 athletes.
Which just makes it such a witch hunt, yeah.
And I think the effect is that they're not actually trying to decrease the overall numbers. I mean, they are, but I think they are actually trying to. I think what they actually want is to deputize people and make them feel as if they can like take matters into their own hands and start to create a culture of fear by having like a more prevalently violent society.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I guess it achieves that. I just kind of feel like even like not left, but like supposedly more left sources being like, oh no, it's so important for the military to be equitable. It's like, for what? Like, the military is evil, you know? Like,
yeah, but I just don't think that's the point. I think the point is that they are doing this to demonize people and to make it seem like they're doing something, when the numbers of trans people in the military and even in sports is like so low that it's just like, why are you focusing so much energy on this, and why are you talking about this so much? It's because it's an easy group of people to demonize, because they don't have a lot of power, and there's, you know, no opposition party that really actually gives a fuck about them. And it plays into like the masculine culture that they're trying to create. And I think it just like all their
no, I
jug
totally
hooters
agree
love
with that.
shit.
Like, I completely get what you're saying. And I feel like,
But the point is not the thing in and of itself, right? Like, it's
I know,
not,
but what I'm saying is that there's a difference between sports and the military. And I feel like that's why I find like the Democratic commentary kind of frustrating, that it's like the military is so inherently evil that it almost legitimizes it to like
yeah.
make it seem laudatory that it is more integrated.
I see.
Yeah.
I would say I think the Democratic argument should take into account the fact that, again, like, that is not the point of it. Like, I think that if the Democratic Party should be saying, like, one, we should not be singling out this group, and they shouldn't. If the Democratic Party is saying, like, we should have them in the military, and like we should have like a proud, like, multiracial, multi-gender, like super inclusive military or whatever, blah blah blah.
Murder children abroad. Yeah.
yeah. No, their thing should be like, one, we know the intent of this is to single out these people and to create like a more danger in our society, and it's like an antisocial thing to do. But two, we should also just generally be like winding down our military spending and having
that's kinda,
fewer people overall have to dedicate their lives to the military.
And I think the way I mean, in my head, it's just like, fuck the military. But I think what you said is like a way that conceivably could be palatable to more Americans. Like, just like focus on the U.S., like, you know, build up. I've always said this, build up like national services infrastructure, like, you know, work on like FEMA disaster response, like reroute those resources elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could still have a lot of pride in serving your country and not have it be military service in an ideal world.
Yeah.
All right. Shoot with shoot with bad.
Yeah. I think I don't have like a ton on this, but I think everyone's probably been following Trump's rhetoric on turning Gaza or like, you know, the U.S. occupying Gaza, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Going back to inauguration in a couple days before, when people were kind of crediting Trump and critiquing Joe Biden, crediting Trump with negotiating the ceasefire even before he got in office, and like, wow, look at him, and he's like so powerful, and like he really stuck it to Netanyahu. And I'm like, seeing the press conference and seeing Biden sitting there with Netanyahu and like being like, we want to occupy Gaza on behalf of Israel.
You said Biden, you meant Trump?
Oh yeah, Trump.
They are pretty interchangeable in this way.
Saying he wants to occupy Gaza on behalf of Israel. I just want to make sure that, because we see Joe Biden as weak and having like absolutely just been steamrolled by Netanyahu and embarrassed by him at every single fucking turn, I don't want to juxtapose Trump as the opposite, because he really isn't. He's like every bit as weak as Joe Biden in front of Netanyahu. One, he didn't even really get a ceasefire. Israel is still expanding its operations in the West Bank. It is still shooting, you know, people in Gaza. We're still sending tons of aid over to Israel, and like, 2,000-pound bombs, and negotiating like a new arms package with them. He's a dog. Like, he is like Netanyahu's bitch. Now he's even saying like, oh, we want to pay U.S. taxpayer money to be able to occupy Gaza on your behalf, and like, let us finish the ethnic cleansing for you. And I really wish at that press conference that like one of the journalists would have just like asked, like, how does Netanyahu's dick taste? Like, he's like, he is Netanyahu's lapdog. And I think people,
but it's the same project. It's an American project. You know what I mean? Like,
it's an Israeli project. Yeah, it's an Israeli American project.
Yeah.
But like, the U.S. is, what I'm saying is that people were like, oh, Trump is going to negotiate. Look at Trump negotiated the ceasefire. Trump like is not going to take the same shit from Netanyahu that like Biden did. And he is. And people need to be like calling him out for the weak dog that he is, and need to be embarrassing him publicly for it.
Yeah.
That's why I'm just like, I do wish someone would have been like, yeah, how does it taste, motherfucker? Because like, I think he would have been embarrassed in public, and like, that's just what needs to happen. Like, that's the only thing that Trump responds to. Like, he's like too much of an egomaniac.
Is what, like a very masculine coded humor?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
I think, yeah, but I guess I don't really know who you're pushing back against. I feel like everyone who's pro-Palestine equally hates both of their Palestine policies.
I mean, there were a bunch of those like...
Oh, are you thinking about like Arabs who like voted for Trump?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, there are those people, and then there are also people who, I mean, maybe for a moment were like a little bit misguided and being like, look, at least Trump got a ceasefire, and I'm like, he didn't. He's like a weak
I understand
negotiator.
He didn't get a full ceasefire, but I do think that he did something that Biden didn't even care to do. I don't think it's because he's a better person. I think it's because he just wants property and wants to like expand U.S. imperialism in a bizarrely old school way, including like making jokes that are maybe not jokes about conquering Canada and Greenland, and like I think he just wants to like set up mini satellite colonies, which is also reprehensible and like will involve ethnic cleansing. But he did get a ceasefire done, and I don't think that he didn't get a full ceasefire done. I don't think he gives a shit that it's not a full ceasefire or an actual ceasefire. I don't think Biden cared to. He didn't like exert any pressure whatsoever on Netanyahu.
Yeah, I mean, forget Biden. I don't. Yeah, like I think. I mean, maybe we just have like slightly different reads of the situation. Like, I just don't think. I think he wanted to go in being like, I'm going to get the ceasefire done and I'm going to get peace in the Middle East, because like that's what he wants, because he wants to buddy up to Saudi Arabia and all this and like normalize.
Which thankfully I think is finally not going to happen. But yeah.
And I do think they wanted to go in and kind of like have like a tough demeanor, but now they are like, okay, let's do like the prison exchange, but they aren't even going to try to hold Israel to continuing the second round of the ceasefire negotiations. They've started to walk that stuff back. They're continuing to like send them the bombs, even though Israel is like not abiding by the ceasefire terms, and they're expanding operations in the West Bank. And so Israel is like going to continue undermining Trump the same way that they did Biden.
Yeah, I mean,
Trump
a lot
is
of
going to look weak.
I'm glad that you pointed that out. I think a lot of the fighting in Gaza has just been transferred. A lot of the like bloodshed in Gaza has just been transferred to the West Bank. Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it doesn't really matter because it's not. I think we're essentially saying the same thing. I guess I don't think it's weak in that I think that the U.S. actively has had a policy of wanting to abet genocide, even if they say something else. So, I mean, it's awful, but it's not. I don't think it's against what either Trump or Biden have wanted. I don't think they're like losing sleep at night that Palestinians are still being murdered. I think if anything, it's a win for Trump that he thinks he can say that he got a ceasefire and then also try and get beachfront property, and also, which I think thankfully there's finally some Arab resistance to, I hope, from like Arab leaders.
I think he actually wants to normalize relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia and have this like Middle East peace deal that was like a pretty big part of his platform last time around.
I think though he's realized that that's not viable now. Saudi might actually finally have some form of popular uprising. If I think they know they can't sign off on that anymore. There's too much united pro-Palestine sentiment throughout the world. I mean, even Egypt is saying they won't take Palestinians, and Sisi is like the number one U.S. lapdog. So, I mean, and even like, yeah, I think there's been analyses that like the monarchy of Jordan would like fall if they took in any more Palestine. Jordan's like half Palestinian ethnically.
Yeah.
They've already,
I guess what I would like to see is that, again, we don't have an opposition party, but even from like some of the progressives in the Democratic Party, however few of them there are, I want to see more rhetoric about them being like, Trump is the weakest, like he is as weak as Biden. I need them to both critique Biden and to critique Trump in the same breath. I need them to be like, Biden was weak against Netanyahu and was weak when it came to Israel, and so is Trump. Trump is every bit as weak. Don't let his fake ceasefire fool you. Don't let his like, we're gonna occupy Gaza, like make it seem like he's taking like a strong stance, because really he's saying, oh, Netanyahu will pay for everything for you, we'll clean up all the mess that you made, and like don't worry about it. And that's like how doesn't get much weaker than that. And I just like, I want to see that, or rather, I want to hear that from the opposition party.
Yeah, one thing that has been really whiplashy. I wish I had saved the article, but just seeing like Times coverage that is like vaguely critical of Trump's Palestine policy when they had no critical commentary whatsoever on Biden's policy is so bizarre. It's just so like two-faced and like such a strange double standard. And I mean, having said that, there's still a lot of really shitty Times coverage on Palestine, but the fact that I've even seen an article or two that are like,
oh, they refer to it as ethnic cleansing.
right, which is shocking.
I'm like, bro.
Right.
I'm like, now is
they
ethnic
don't use
cleansing?
the term genocide.
Just
but
now?
Like, yeah, and that's the thing that I think we're getting at here is like not trying to say like, oh, ethnic cleansing better than genocide. Like Palestine is for Palestinians. All of it is awful and like the direct fault of American taxpayer money and American elected officials. It's weird to me, at least, that mainstream media is only critiquing Trump and didn't critique Biden the same way. And whether you think of it as like an extension of U.S. policy or the U.S. being a lapdog of Israel's, I think you come to the same conclusion that you should be critiquing both.
Yeah. Yeah. Insane how it suddenly became ethnic cleansing on January 20th.
Totally. Yeah.
Other thing. Okay. So that was Trump bad. Let's talk about Trump good.
Okay.
The other thing that happened that I'm like, okay, why didn't Joe Biden do this as like the most progressive president that we've ever had in our history? But Trump had signed an executive order saying, essentially creating a sovereign wealth fund.
Oh yeah. Explain what that is, because actually you introduced me to that concept. I didn't know it before.
Well, I'm not going to do a great job, but anyway, so he signed an executive order. A sovereign wealth fund is a fund that nationalizes some assets, and the idea is that the same way that an investment bank or has a mutual fund, or you invest in a fund and it pays dividends or whatever, the U.S. would have a fund that you would have shares of, so it would issue shares to. Actually, it could or could not. But the idea is that the nation itself owns a fund that provides some level of return, and that return could be used on things like social programs, or it could even be used to pay a dividend to the citizens, right? So imagine you would have like a bank account connected, and they would just be able to put that dividend directly into your bank account, and they could do that in times of crisis, right? Like if unemployment is high or something like that, or if we have another pandemic and they need to issue out payments suddenly, these are things that you could use the sovereign wealth fund for.
Or you were also telling me that it can be used for a lot of like public works projects, right? Like building infrastructure.
I mean, it could be used for anything, but the idea is that it's supposed to be used for something that benefits the people.
That's so cool.
Right?
Like we could have like actual trains or something.
And the other really great thing about a sovereign wealth fund is that you can grow it in a lot of different ways. So you could nationalize, assets like oil and gas in the country, right? And say like, oh, these assets are owned by the people now, right? You could
be a part of your taxes potentially.
Well, yeah. So companies are notoriously good at dodging income tax, and this could be a way to get around that and say, oh, well, instead of paying the income tax in whatever dollars or whatever, we're going to take it as a share of your outstanding shares.
Interesting.
So we're going to take X% of stock, and that's the income tax. And then that continues to grow, right? And then the other interesting thing is that you can actually, as a country, start to shift industries and other areas of investment. So if you want more development of like alternative energy and like renewable energy, for example, right? Like you could, once you have a big enough position, and obviously like as the US government, you can take a huge position in anything. And once you start to shift your investments, that also shifts what the market is doing, right? So you could say, all right, we're going to pull our investments out of oil and gas and actually start to put them more toward renewable energies. And then
that would like encourage other companies or companies to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's like when a big shark kind of just like moves, like all the little fish move. I don't really know if that's
no, that makes
anyway,
sense.
you get the idea.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I feel like one broken clock right twice a day.
Yeah.
Like we shouldn't lose track. And also it's just an interesting concept that I genuinely like never had heard of before, which is kind of bizarre because I guess a lot of like Scandinavian countries have it and stuff.
Sweden has one, Norway has one, Finland has one. I mean, a lot of countries, a lot of states in the U.S. actually have sovereign wealth funds.
Really?
Alaska has a sovereign wealth fund that pays a dividend to
From like their oil?
Yeah, like every citizen of Alaska gets a check every year.
No idea.
As a dividend, and it's a couple $1,000s, which is great.
Yeah.
So why doesn't the U.S. have one? Now, there's nothing legislation-wise that says the sovereign wealth fund would have to spend money on XYZ, like on Social Security or healthcare or whatever, right?
That's just been the norm globally.
So who knows what Trump's sovereign wealth fund will look like?
Okay, that's good to know.
The executive order he signed, I have it up here. The Treasury, Secretary of the Treasury and the Secretary of Commerce have to deliver a plan within 90 days of the creation of they have to deliver a plan within 90 days for the creation of a sovereign wealth fund. So we don't know how they're going to seed the fund or like what it's going to look like at all. We don't know exactly what it's going to be spent on. It says here, called for the creation of a sovereign wealth fund to invest in great national endeavors for the benefit of all American people. Now, is Trump going to create a sovereign wealth fund and invest it in Trump coin so that his own net worth goes up? Is Trump going to create a sovereign wealth fund and invest heavily in community policing and private prisons because that's for the benefit of the American people? Or is he going to invest it in weapons manufacturers or give it to real estate developers? Who knows, right? So I'm cautiously optimistic. The only thing that makes me a little bit more optimistic is that the fact that J.D. Vance is his vice president, and J.D. Vance has sought the counsel of one Matt Bruenig.
Really?
In the past. Yeah.
Whoa, interesting.
So
J.D. Vance also seems kind of like a spineless dope, but
yeah,
that would be cool if he was helpful in this one area.
So who knows? I actually did reach out to Matt Bruenig because I saw this news and I was like, oh my God, it would be awesome to have him on the podcast to talk about what a sovereign wealth fund is and what we should be on the lookout for as the plan.
Matt works on what, socialist economics essentially?
Matt Bruenig is a policy wonk guy. If we've mentioned him before, but he runs the People's Policy Project. He's also a labor lawyer and more recently has launched an NLRB database that you can search any NLRB case and get a summary of it. And
isn't the NLRB kind of what did Trump
under
do?
attack right now? Yeah, it is. Yeah, he's fired a bunch of people, and I think right now it doesn't have a quorum, so effectively the NLRB cannot issue any rulings or guidance. Period.
Wow.
So if you're someone who has a case at the NLRB, you're just kind of fucked. But yeah, so I imagine he's probably as one of the foremost, he's written a paper on the creation of America's sovereign wealth fund. Like
a plan for before it existed.
Right. And I imagine he's probably very busy with media stuff.
And probably NLRB stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. It would be cool to have him on, though. I'd love to do that and have
Matt,
a conversation.
If you're listening,
yeah,
Ahmed loves you.
I'd also like to talk to him about Sukuk bonds. You know what that is?
Islamic bonds?
Yeah.
I feel like I told you what that was.
No.
Oh.
I studied finance.
But you studied Sukuk bonds.
No, but it comes up in finance when we talk about bonds.
They talk about Islamic law in your college classes?
It's mentioned, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I did not study
finance. They don't talk
finance.
about Islamic law. They just talk about this particular bond.
I did not study finance, but I teach one class on Islamic finance, and I really stretched to teach that lecture because I don't understand much about finance, but the bonds came up.
I actually don't really know how they really function. I think they just find a different way to hide interest.
What they essentially do
they take royalties.
Is that they have a set interest rate that is not exponentially growing, but basically it's calculated over a period so that it's usually slightly better than a market inflated rate, but it's still essentially interest, I think.
But that's what a bond is. A bond is a fixed income asset.
I guess it makes more of a difference if you're talking about Islamic loans versus non-Islamic loans, but you're right. I don't really know what the difference is for bonds. But for loans, I think it does make us an interest. It does make a difference that it's on the principal, the percentage that you're paying.
Yeah, it
and
compounds.
And not compounding. It's not compounding interest.
Right, but a bond in the U.S., if you buy a treasury bond, it is a fixed income asset. So there is like a fixed interest rate.
I don't know in that case.
And then it pays out at a certain time. It has a face value. Yeah. I think a Sukuk bond is supposed to be like no interest, but you somehow get like equity or like royalties until it's paid off. I'm like, I think you just end up hiding interest somehow. But
which that's also a critique even of the loans, is that it's like a bit of a workaround.
Yeah.
Actually, one of my students wrote a really good paper on Islamic finance, if you want to read it, that I will be reading again before I reteach that lecture.
Yeah. I'm sure there's like there are a bunch of papers out there and stuff, but
his was very good.
Yeah.
Very well explained.
Okay. We got to look into that. But anyway, Matt Brune, come on the podcast. That's all I had for the Trump roundup.
That was good. I'm glad that you remembered the Sovereign Fund. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Mm-hmm. We love you. Why aren't you saying it?
Okay, bye, everyone.